Hello, this is a lecture for Chapter 2 of the textbook. So the learning objectives of this chapter are to recognize the relationship between the business drivers and information systems security policy. The chapter provides an overview of the concepts that can reduce the business risk. So the key concepts that will be covered are business drivers for ISS policy, maintaining compliance with policy and controls, business risk exposure, operational consistency, and also business liability. So the business drivers, that is, first one, security policies should be relevant to business needs, and security controls should be compatible with business requirements. So security isn't just an IT issue, it's a business issue. So the business concerns for this, first to be cost. Was the cost of these controls? That is, what is the return on the investment, the ROI? Impact. Was the impact on customers? How many steps will the customers need to go through to get to their accounts or to their information? Regulation. Does the organization have a legally defensible position? And adoption. Do employees understand the policies and controls? Are employees willing to follow those policies and controls? So what is compliance? So it's adhering to rules such as those security policies, regulations that exist in the industry, and also the laws in the state or country where you are operating. With regards to information security, security policies take regulatory legal requirements into account. So it's a security policy compliance. So a relationship exists between controls and policy. Controls support policy. Compliance is measured against those controls. The policy supports the business requirements, and the business requirements are derived from the regulatory requirements. So policy versus controls. So the policy are why you set the controls. They are what type of protection you need and why protections are needed. And the controls are how you do protect the information. How protections are to be implemented, that is the technical details that need to be put into place for those controls. So there are three common security controls. First is physical. Those are devices that prevent or deter access, like locks, cameras, and guards. There are administrative and procedural controls. Those are controls that require human effort. Security awareness training, operations manuals are examples. Then there are technical controls. There are logical controls imposed through software, things such as passwords and anti-malware software. So the security control actions. So you have the preventive control. So that first line, if there is a threat launched against the organization, it can stop the breach. So the incident or breach is prevented. And the second line is detection control. So it tells the organization that a breach has taken place. So if there is a threat launched against the organization, they are alerted to the threat. And then there's corrective control. That is, how quickly can the organization recover from the attack. So the security control design types, again, they are preventive, prevents an incident from occurring, firewall as an example. Then there's detective, knowing that being alerted that the threat has happened. A log review is an example of that. And then corrective, that is, restores the operation from backup or recovery. Then there are mitigating risk exposure through policies. So policy reflects business risk management decisions and perception of risk by promoting risk-aware culture through employee security awareness program. That is putting the right incentives in place for employees so that they are aware about the security needs, and then preventing intellectual property loss occurs with human resource policies. So policy compliance equates to an acceptable level of risk. That is the risk appetite. And that risk appetite is a scale that allows you to measure risk against predictive business losses. So if a company processes credit cards through a third-party provider, they may not maintain those credit cards within the organization. They might be off on a third party. Therefore, that would be taken into consideration for the risk appetite. Since we don't have credit card numbers for our employees in our system, that could be taken into consideration for that appetite. So, minimizing liability through policy implementation. Starting at the top, create or update policy. Policies on how to handle customer information. That is, who can access that particular information. Then you enforce the policy. Take action if policies are violated. So if you have policies in place that you can't go out and just look through customer information, and someone does look at that information, then it needs to be enforced. It needs to be some type of action taken against employees who do violate those policies. And then minimize response to incidents, minimize the risk to customers, analyze incidents, find out what happened and take action. And then educate employees, make sure they have the proper training, make sure they are aware, and again, the proper incentives are in place so that employees do follow those policies. So protecting intellectual property. So intellectual property is a broad term covering original information owned that provides a business advantage. It could be ideas, products, inventions, business processes, business models. Those are all the intangible assets that companies have. They classify and label data, sensitive, confidential. That is, how valuable is that information to the organization. And then mark files when it's possible for that classification and label. And then protect digital assets, the files, the graphics, audio, video, and also take regular inventory of those files. Again, protecting those digital assets. Again, you define security policy, define the controls for those policies, inventory the digital assets, apply labels and classifications to those assets, and then enforce the security controls. So personally identifiable information. That's part of protecting the privacy of customers and also of employees. This category of data may need special treatment due to customer expectations of privacy, legal requirements, laws that may vary in the country, state, or industry. And security policies should address disclosures to individuals, what's being stored, and how is it used. If you have credit card numbers, social security numbers, medical data. How is that stored? How is it used? And then encryption of that personal identifiable information when it's being transmitted or even when it's just sitting in the system. So minimizing business liability. So liability arises when the organization fails to meet its obligations. That is legal or contractual requirements. The impacts could be fines, restrictions of business, lost business through loss of customer trust, and also lawsuits. And good security policies help reduce those liabilities to organizations. So the tools to reduce business liability, you need to have acceptable use policies particularly for your employees. What's acceptable for use of the internet or social media. Have those guidelines in place for employees. Confidentiality agreements prohibits entities like employees or contractors from disclosing confidential or sensitive information. And then insurance policies, transfer the risk in the event of an incident. So if something does happen, breach, your insurance policy would kick in. So reducing risk through operational consistency. So business processes should be repeatable and sustainable to support, have better risk detection and removal, and also have operational efficiency. Through those policies, organizations can enforce business processes and reduce operational deviation. So in summary, what we looked at in this chapter are the relationship between business drivers and security policies, the concept of compliance and the relationship between security controls and security policy, security control classifications and design types, mitigation of risk exposure through security policies, security policy implementation and enforcement lifecycle, the role of security policy in operational consistency, and also minimizing business liabilities through security policies. Thank you.